How World War II financially engineered the American middle class. This is the story of how modern America was built. In the summer of 1944, a 22-year-old American soldier stands in the mud outside Saint-Lô, France. The air smells like gasoline, wet soil, and burning steel. German artillery lands somewhere beyond the hedgerows. He has not slept properly in days. Back home, his father still works 12-hour shifts at a factory in Ohio. His mother stretches every ration coupon she can find. Before the war, the family barely survives the Great Depression. They lose savings, neighbors lose farms, men line up for bread. The soldier has no reason to believe his future will be different. And yet, within less than a decade, he will own a suburban home with a government-backed mortgage. His children will attend college. He will enter the single greatest expansion of middle-class prosperity in modern history. The transformation appears miraculous, but it is not accidental. World War II rewires the American economy. It destroys old assumptions about labor, debt, government spending, and manufacturing. It creates a new financial architecture, one capable of mass prosperity on a scale the world has never seen before. How does a global war create the American middle class? And why does the system eventually begin hollowing itself out? In 1933, the United States is an economic disaster zone. Nearly 1 out of every 4 American workers is unemployed. Farmers dump milk into ditches because prices collapse. The American middle class, as we know it, barely exists. Then the war arrives. Between 1940 and 1945, federal spending explodes by more than 10 times. The government reorganizes the entire economy. Factories that once manufactured refrigerators begin producing bombers. The government becomes the primary customer, bypassing economic hesitation. The middle class emerges from an unprecedented partnership between government spending, industrial expansion, and labor organization. After 1945, the GI Bill provides returning veterans with subsidized education and low-cost mortgages. It is a masterpiece of economic engineering. Federal housing reforms change the structure entirely. Banks lend money, families buy homes, and construction companies build the suburbs. A home is no longer simply a place to live. It becomes an appreciating asset, financed through leverage, transforming workers into owners. World War II also reorganizes global finance around American power. In 1944, delegates meet at Bretton Woods to design a new system, but the system contains hidden fractures. Black Americans frequently face discrimination in housing through redlining and unequal mortgage access. By 1971, the architecture begins to crack. President Nixon suspends dollar convertibility into gold, ending the Bretton Woods era. The post-war middle class enters an entirely new world, a world defined by debt, global competition, and the search for a new engine. At first, the collapse of the gold standard appears technical, abstract, remote from ordinary life, but it fundamentally alters the global economy's operating system. Under Bretton Woods, the dollar is constrained, at least theoretically, by gold reserves. Once that link breaks, the United States enters a new monetary era where currency creation and debt expansion become dramatically more flexible. To understand why, imagine the post-war middle class as a bridge supported by 4 massive pillars: unions, manufacturing, rising wages, and affordable assets. During the decades after World War II, those pillars reinforce one another. Companies generate profits through production, and workers share gains through wages. After the 1970s, however, the structure begins shifting from production toward finance. Inflation surges, and oil shocks destabilize prices across the board. For the first time in the post-war era, productivity and wages begin separating. This divergence becomes a defining economic story of modern America. Wall Street grows in influence while industrial employment shrinks. The system increasingly relies not on rising wages, but on rising asset prices and expanding credit. During the post-war boom, a single stable manufacturing income can often support a family. By the 1990s, households require dual incomes and larger debt. Banks lend money, families buy homes, home values rise. But if rising prices sustain consumption, the system becomes addicted to those rising prices. When home prices begin falling in the mid-2000s, the entire chain reverses. Mortgage defaults rise, banks face losses, and millions of families lose security. A family home is no longer simply shelter, it is collateral. A college education is no longer simply learning, it is debt-financed human capital investment. The COVID-19 pandemic reveals this clearly. Governments worldwide inject enormous sums to prevent collapse, reminiscent of wartime economic management. Younger generations increasingly face higher education costs, higher healthcare costs, and more precarious labor markets. The latter still exists, but the rungs are farther. The middle class is not an inevitable byproduct of capitalism alone. It is a political, financial, and institutional construction that can weaken. World War II helps create the strongest middle class by combining state capacity and industrial production. But success gradually encouraged the financialization we see. The American middle class is infrastructure. It depends on affordable housing, accessible education, and institutions capable of distributing gains broadly. By the end of the war, the soldier in St. Lo cannot see the system forming. He cannot see the housing bubble or algorithmic trading. Once you understand how the American middle class was built, you begin noticing the load-bearing beams and the cracks spreading quietly through them.